Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Hi, and welcome to our next episode of Decoding AQ. With me today, I have Olga Spivak. Is that the right way to pronounce your name?
Spivak, that's correct.
Spivak,
You got it right.
Fantastic. Who's coming from Lake Zurich over in Illinois near Chicago. And currently, Olga is the Vice President of People at YCharts, which is a Series C funded company with an investment and research platform that enables smarter investments and better client communications for more than 5,000 clients. But you've had over a decade and a half of experience in all areas of HR. So I can't wait to dive into that in areas from working in insurance companies, technology companies, the investment sector. But you love to create and implement strategy at this intersection of business and people. So alongside this, you're currently studying for your doctorate and degree in psychology and 5 years experience as a coach. So welcome, Olga.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross, for such a warm introduction. I'm very excited to be here, and I love what you're doing with Decoding AQ, and I'm honored to be a part of your journey.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to start actually with when I was looking at some of your experience and where you've been, I was intrigued by BuildingUp.Club. So tell me, as a founding board member of that, tell me a little bit more about not just what it is, but why did you start it?
Oh, yes. So it is a really good question. A few leaders in Chicagoland area and I got together and we thought about what is missing in the community. And our goal is to bring people together, especially women from all levels of their career, to create a safe space for coaching, for developing, for mentoring, for supporting one another. And we decided to create Building Up, where we really literally build each other up, and we're there for each other through all stages of life, personal, professional, but definitely focusing on more career aspiration, anywhere from college students and helping them make the right choice in their career to adapting to the workforce challenges and the workplace demands as they continue to shift.
And it's interesting, isn't it, about how at certain points in our lives and our career, we very consciously think about what's missing and who's around us. Who do we try to surround ourselves with? And what can we offer? What can we add? What do we need? And so I just love this idea. And I've seen it happen in lots of places, you know, these women's circles, men's circles, things where we're getting peers together to co-elevate and support each other. So I love that. And what's been the toughest part about it in the last 3 years, and what's been the best part about it, Olga?
Yeah, great question. So I think the toughest part, I'll start with that, is getting people to feel comfortable and getting the sense of engagement and developing the element of community in the remote setting, because our first couple meetings, they happened to be in person. We got super connected, ignited, energized. But then, of course, COVID happened, right? So we had to adjust and we needed to keep the momentum going. So we did things like cooking experiences for women and their partners, and anybody else was welcome to that experience, and different talks and subjects about how we can continue to support each other. But I think the toughest part is really missing that element of in-person connection, missing out on the body language that I think we're all starting to adapt to and learning how to read remotely, if you would. But I think that was the biggest challenge and a hurdle for us. And I think the biggest success was that we were still able to make a difference. We were able to make a difference in people's lives where we saw women accept opportunities and rise up through corporate ladders. We helped to make people and support their decisions in terms of whichever way they wanted to go. And we were still able to achieve our mission, which is to support and create and to build each other up. And we continue to stay connected. We continue to support one another through different methods. But of course, finding and adapting to the new way we live is a challenge.
And it's interesting when we think about this and the parallels to a work environment of a lot of the similar challenges, that when we work in a group, we have often this common purpose, a vision, mission, and then these complex things called humans all get together around that, and we try and create value. And then we have all of these things that shift and maneuver around the heart of what you do, in terms of trying to balance business objectives with then people and what their journeys are, what they're going through, and what might shift from, hey, it's great when this playbook works, we're all together and we're doing stuff, or then something comes along like a technology or pandemic, and we're constantly having to evolve and adapt. And if I wind us back a little bit, you worked at a firm where you were establishing a lot of, from the ground zero, the actual HR culture and operations and setup. What were some of the things that you really wanted to do when it was a clean slate and that business gave you the freedom to do things that maybe people that might have existing frameworks, existing things could benefit from? What did you do when you had a clean slate to set something up around the people department and your HR structure? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think actually I can use YCharts as a perfect example, because it is an organization where I was the first HR person hired into YCharts, and I had an opportunity to tap into a culture that has been fostered by amazing leadership team, by kindness, by empathy, by very goal-oriented kind of structure. And I was really, and continue to be, very motivated to build out the HRIS, the operational component. But now it's really focusing on the culture, and it's really focusing on that element of engagement and helping employees from different generations adapt to the way we work. So one of the things that I'm proud of that we did as a leadership team is we developed a framework of the way we work, and we actually call it purposefully the way we work model for our employees, which incorporates flexibility, and it incorporates structure of what we expect as a business to make sure that we keep each other connected. We continue to have those innovative moments. We continue to come together as a team that is dispersed, but we also have the freedom to hire remotely and to expand internationally and to really foster that virtual experience as well. So I would say that is one of the coolest things that we've done as a team, and to see how well it works and to see how our employees respond to it and how other organizations learn from that framework seems to be one of the rewarding things for me. And yes, COVID maybe forced us to do it, but at the same time, finding that rhythm where we no longer have to wonder about what it means to work in a remote environment, and having that clarity, purpose, and guidance, I think is one of the accomplishments that we all did as a team at YCharts.
It's something that many organizations are going through right now, is this figuring out within the new context of hybrid, that whilst we can have the technology that exists, whilst we can have the frameworks and processes, there's often this human part that has this great benefit and great loss at the same time. And that sort of balancing act between ultimate flexibility, but potentially then loss of connection and isolation, that we can substitute part of that by let's get together on Zoom, and brilliant. And every so often, maybe we come together in physical. But it is different now, isn't it, Olga? The way in which people are able to connect in this kind of function that we have that allows remote workers from different parts of the world. Great. But I know from our experience, we've had some people who've worked with us a couple of years and we've never physically met them. And it's, you're on Slack all the time, you're on Zoom all the time, you're doing that. And you go, and we met them for the first time and we go, oh, so that's how tall you are, or that's your shape.
That's
all
what you
these,
look like. Yeah.
Yeah, all these simple things. And it's just such a human desire to have that same energy space. How are you dealing with maybe some of those challenges? Because it's when something's novel and new, we kind of just, go with it, we figure it out. But we're coming out into this area where that's becoming now the way we work, right? What are you seeing emerging from that sort of honeymoon period of flexibility to now, this is the rhythm, as you described?
Yeah, great question. So I can give you an example of what we currently implement, and I can't stress enough how important the clarity is, and taking out the ambiguity and the wondering part from the employee perspective is so important, that you have that certainty. And what we promote in the organization is an element of togetherness. So we provide a menu-based approach to the organization, and those are 4 different ways of how we foster our togetherness. So our requirement, and we use intentional language around those things, right? So 2 to 3 times a year, we currently require people to be together in person, for teams to get to know each other in person, for them to plan around their family life, and to make sure we celebrate holidays together where they can bring their families along. And we have team building events, to having specific technology events for tech groups, or having specific customer success events. So having that 2 to 3 year in-person connection being required sets the tone for the organization. And then if people are residing within proximity of the office and are able to commute and are able to make it to the office without too much kind of disruption to their work and family life, we have a monthly preference option. So we do have an opportunity to foster people in the office, foster that element of culture, have happy hours together in the office, and have leadership visibility as much as we can during that monthly preference. And then we have weekly recommended attendance for employees that really like to come to the office, that have a need to come to the office. And again, that gives us an opportunity to select a day when we can all be together, or as many of us. It could be 5 employees at one point, it could be 50 employees, it could be 100 employees at a given time, right? And then also, our 4th option is open togetherness. Our offices, we actually have 2 headquarters, one in Chicago, one in New York. Our offices are always open, and people who like to be in the office at all times, they're welcome to be there at all times. We provide lunch credits whenever people are in the office, and make sure that we have very comfortable working environment. So that speaks to our culture, to our DNA. And I think it's very important to tailor a strategy to the company's personality and what matters to the organization. Actually, one of the HR colleagues reached out to me the other day. She's like, well, we have 12,000 employees. What would you recommend from the tech perspective and from the innovation perspective? What do you recommend for us? And when we share best practices in the HR world, I can't stress enough the importance of understanding the culture and what people really need. So you look at the workforce demographic, our company is mainly Gen Z, millennials. So we really get to know them as people, so we can cater toward the productivity and flexibility component and find that happy middle ground with the accountability element. And that's been kind of the secret sauce to our success.
I like this idea, first off, of clarity, right? And knowing what the rules of the game are. We can then decide, I want to play that game or I don't want to play that game when we know the rules. And equally, removing uncertainty lets us just, okay, I can breathe. I'm not trying to go in 100-mile-an-hour in my mind about what it might or might not be. I remember a study I read years ago about when they put in the time to the next train at train stations, the effect that had on people, where they'd arrive at a train station and there was no knowledge of, well, how long till the next train. It was particularly on the London Underground. How long is the next train? When is it? What's happening? And you'd have this heightened stress or anxiety or things going on, to then just put up next train, 3 minutes. When I know that, suddenly it doesn't change when the next train is going to be there or not, but it changes how I feel about the fact that I now know. So I think humans want that clarity. They need that clarity, and being able to get to the point where you can give it around the structure of, here's some requirements, here's some options, here's some flexibility, and here's the actual system structure to support around that. So it's all very well saying, oh yeah, hybrid can have office, but then, well, the office isn't viable and we need to do this, and therefore how many people are going and we need you to commit to it, and so do we take on the premises? All of the complexities around some very simple decisions has a lot of ongoing bits. So I like that idea of clarity, and then the personalization aspect. I think what's interesting then is the bespokeness according to the culture. So you mentioned you have a particular demographic, for example, and a particular type of company. You started off with, hey, I can use YCharts as an example, high empathy, a culture that cares about its people to think in that sort of way. The reality is we still need to provide productive work and valuable work whilst learning, whilst enjoying, and the shift between what maybe in the past might have been perks and benefits to now just the way I'm doing work feels more fulfilling, feels more enriching, rather than that's drudgery, but it offsets because I get to do these perks and bonuses. It's just redesigning the drudgery to being the thrive and the joy in all of it, rather than this other. So I really like that kind of thinking. And in terms of then that structure of hybrid nature, when people are developing, and I want to tap in a little bit more to maybe your coaching thought and coaching background, is, of course, stuff might change. I go, know the clarity, I'm picking this, but you know what, Olga, this has now happened, and what I was doing before isn't now right. I need to do that, but I need to change this. How do you deal with that as a company when there's maybe need for people's circumstances to shift around those different options, different thoughts? How do you help people through that?
Absolutely. That's where we foster that open door policy. We certainly have so many ways we communicate to employees, whether it's an all company meeting every Friday, whether it's one-on-one employee conversation, whether it's coffee chat that we do on a monthly basis from the HR department with some of our new hires where everyone is welcome. It's really understanding people for who they are. And I think where that coaching element, if I were to put that coach element and hat on, what I would say is it is so critical to have developmental syncs with employees. And by what I mean with that is making sure that you know where employees going and developing a career path, checking in on what does this employee want to do, and understanding that career pathing now can consist of 4,000 options because again, the way we work changed, and how can we provide those stretch assignments? How can we make sure that we tap into people's highest potential? How can we provide stretch opportunities? And how can we do even the remote job shadowing or remote internship? Or how can we coach people and develop people into becoming next leaders? So one of the things that I'm proud to say is over the past couple of months at YCharts, we've promoted 20% of our organization. And with that being said, we've definitely invested into training and developing and making sure that there is a touch point and that we as a leadership team are completely aligned regarding the messaging and how we deliver our processes and how we carry the culture card around, because what we encourage people to do, and this is actually something that we talked about in our coffee chat today, one of the things that people are surprised about is that we don't have too much of a hierarchy. People can really be vulnerable and people can truly be themselves. And by being yourself, I think that's when you can tap into the highest potential. That's where you can fulfill the purpose. That's when you can be authentic and real with your manager, with HR, and say, you know what, I've been in marketing. I perhaps would love to try a little bit of HR or a little bit of sales or a little bit of customer success. What could it look like for me? So we can get together again as a leadership team and say, absolutely, let's make this work. And let's make sure that this employee has an opportunity to experience all the functions, and let's identify the strength of our workforce and how can we continue to grow people within our organization without them leaving. And I think by doing that, we've been fortunate enough to avoid the great resignation that we all hear about, because we really care about people and we really care about how and where they're going and supporting them along the way. But also, we're not afraid to having those conversations that say, hey, you've started with the organization 9 months ago. Here are the things I still need you to master in this role before you can be successful in learning another part of the job or the company, right? So it's really coaching and mentoring and learning from people as well and how we can be better, because learning is a two-way street.
It is. And it's a key part, isn't it? This employee mobility, the ability for individuals to have maybe unthought of prior pathways across the organization, from departmental to tasks to all these sorts of things. And the encouragement and structure around that is an interesting one. And I've got a couple of thoughts that I wanted to dig into this, Olga, of the balance that organizations find of, right, we care about you, we want to know who you are, and we want to develop you. And equally, the business wants to develop itself and its growth. And beautiful harmony when those things line up, right? When I say I come along and, oh, I'd like to learn about finance, and finance needs stabilizing up, and where I'm coming from needs, scaling down or whatever it might be. And it all lines. I align, business aligns. But there may be opportunities at which either the business's objectives of what it needs of future skills, future development, future innovations that it's trying to launch, from whatever sense, geographical, technological, what kind of opportunities or pressures it's under. And then equally an individual's propensity or desire to want to do that or not. So when it's all lined up in harmony, cool and the gang. When it's not, that's an interesting one. And so that's one part that maybe we want to discuss. But then I also wanted to just tap into the fact that you said we've had 20% of our people promoted. Was there a common thread of the types of training that you put in place across the organization on leadership that enabled that to happen? Was it common threads around, hey, communication skills, problem solving skills, or things that allowed it? Or was it just so personalized, so bespoke, that the system worked to allow that happen in multiple ways? That's really what I want to dive into first. Then maybe we'll cover the other bit after.
Perfect. So it's actually a combination of both. It's definitely growing and developing people and getting to know them, but also identifying the right time when promotions happen so we can continue to grow and adhere to our business and scale accordingly. So that taps into your first question a little bit too, because we have a very focused roadmap on where we are, where we need to get to, what our goals are from the organizational standpoint. We share those with our employees. We have very focused SMART goals for each employee as well. And we absolutely look at how does this skill set benefit the employee, but also gets us further in our roadmap, and how can we balance the two, make sure that we're investing in the employees, but investing in the business, making sure that they are correlated. So while we certainly focus on the fulfillment part, there is no question that it benefits the business, but it's also benefiting the employees, where we identify and tailor our training and development initiatives specifically to either groups or cohorts of individuals. Like, for example, the people, the 20%, we've put those employees through first time management program to make sure that they know how to have a productive one-on-one, how to do performance appraisal, right? So they can continue to take the torch and keep passing on throughout the organization, and empowering those individuals to make decisions and to be a part of that strategic vision, I think gets the buy-in and helps the business become more innovative, more agile. And that's where we continue to exceed our plans.
Is this, wonderful thing when it works, isn't it? When you have this environment and it fosters this kind of positive hysteria that if one of your colleagues has done some stuff and moved, they've got a smile on their face when they come in, or you see them on Zoom and they've gone into an area and they've been given the pathways, the skills, the training and support in order to thrive in that section, then it gives them inspiration, encouragement to see it does work, it can happen. And it creates this almost ripple effect across an organization, which it sounds like perhaps is happening where success breeds success, where these types of programs are working. Well, is there areas at which what are you tackling next? So it sounds like there's a lot of things that you've had opportunity to go, let's relook at our playbook. This is the way we do our operational working. Let's look at our development pathways. Let's look at what the business needs. Let's communicate clarity. Let's get them programs to align them up so that our partner success and client success is going to be like this. Then we're going to build in AI tech. Then we're going to do this. So we've got the vision and the roadmap, right? Now, in terms of maybe what's coming next, once you've got those things in place, what does that look like, Olga?
Yeah, great question. Working on that as we speak, so couldn't be more timely. So we're definitely in the stage of the business where now we need to focus on optimizing what we've built, right? And by optimizing what we've built is, for example, we've put in the new HRIS system. So now how can we increase the engagement and make sure that people move toward that new HRIS system, that we continue to foster our community? One of the things that we do is quarterly employee surveys. So we always have an opportunity to focus on initiatives. So our big one is going to be the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how can we bring more of that into the workplace? In our industry, it's still a struggle. We still see the average kind of percentage of male versus female ratio being skewed, and what can we do differently to be a game changer in that field, and how can we enable all the tools, all the people, all the successes, but also learn from what maybe didn't work in the past, and how can we achieve those goals and set those metrics, because they're very, very important. And then luckily, our employee net promoter score is very high. So one of the things that we are also challenged to do, because we have a number of new people, we've also grown by about 47% since I joined the organization, actually close to 50 now. And with that being said, how can we tap into the new talent that recently joined us? And how can we continue to make everybody our culture ambassador? And how can we tap into people to continue to support the community that we've established? And how can we achieve our revenue goals with that?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two bits I want to pick up on. The first one of diversity, equity, inclusion, huge challenge for many organizations. I know a lot of we've got now just over 200 coaches and consultants that are working with organizations to help them with their adaptability and their change. And many of those are around diversity and inclusion and well-being. And this, they might have a mandate, a desire, and then the ability to implement on that is very challenging. You've got some complex pieces in there about how do we unlearn certain things? How do we unlearn certain biases, even if we didn't even know we had them, to make opportunities for new areas or thoughts? And it is often not just the insular of the environment of the company, it's industry and society and each of these things. So as we break out from figuring out that individual who might have hiring or recruitment or collaboration opportunities, how do we think differently about this diversity inclusion? Is it just about the people we give a paycheck? Or is it maybe we think differently in our supply chain? Maybe we think differently in the way we think about diversity and inclusion is an interesting one. And my other observation by this, network of coaches councils that we just hear the flow of the challenges is, it's a bit like at a party, you get cliques. You get these cliques where they all know each other, they're getting on really well, and they tend to orbit of like minds, right? People who feel the same, like the same stuff. It's, oh, Olga, what did you watch last night? Oh, I watched this. Oh, yeah, me too. And you speak to someone else. Oh, I love horror. And I go, oh, that's not my thing. And we orbit around sameness. And so if you have this really strong culture that I've got a great culture, we do all of these things. And then suddenly you want some diversity. And we used to have this, get cultural fit. And I talk about, no, we want cultural add. Because if it's fit, it all looks the bloody same. It's like an echo chamber. We want cultural add. And it's a different perspective of how do we adapt the thinking and process when everything's beautiful, they're all happy. But to come into that seems very difficult. And on the inside, you can't see it because you're on the inside. So I'm just fascinated about the thoughts that you've got around the adapting of not just the processes, the structure, the systems that might actually break some of the good stuff in order to make room for that difference potentially. What's your thoughts on that, Olga?
Absolutely. I love that. I love the way you phrased it. So one of my coaches, one of my friends, I love the way she puts the diversity, equity, inclusion element into play. And this is her quote. It's about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's you're invited to a dance is one part of it. And then are you actually invited to dance with? Asked to dance, right? So using that element and that framework, one of the things that we found to be very successful is to do a specific diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging onboarding for all of our new employees and talk about what it means and talk about it from the lens of employees, what it means to them. So we often forget about diversity of thought and that we all come from so many experiences, so many different places. We might look the same, we might not look the same, we might be from different parts of the world, but at the same time, we go through so many different experiences. We can never walk in each other's shoes, no matter how hard we try, every shoe fits differently. And by letting employees know that upfront and agreeing upon that with our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, I think is one of the keys to kind of break that element of
make progress towards
exactly. So I think that's one of the things that we currently do that stands out, but also having difficult conversations and listening to voices that are around you that are different and respecting and how they feel about issues and which issues are important for us to focus on in the moment, I think is an important element of learning for me too, because again, it depends on where you come from and what your experience is. Your reaction is going to be different. So pausing, understanding, learning from that reaction and responding to it in an inclusive way is something that I've certainly learned throughout the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think many people have, Olga, and it's in our model, we have a few dimensions that are coming to mind in terms of measuring and understand someone's ability of mental flexibility. Can they hold opposing thoughts at the same time and not end up in a padded cell? You know, have we got that ability to live in paradox? And equally then in our elements of character, what's the emotional health in terms of, are we reacting or are we responding? You know, are we collected when things happen, when shift? And then the whole environment factor that we look at in terms of things, for example, like psychological safety under team support. So you might have the ability to think in a, you know, flexible way. We might have inside a little team, some safety that says, hey, Olga, it's great. Let's share some things about being diverse in thought. And I'm not going to hit you over the head if your thought's different than my thought, or I'm not going to, you know, instantly accelerate or be biased towards an idea based on hierarchy or experience. That the naive mind is where most innovation comes from anyway. So we want that to come from there. And equally then having this environment that fosters that system basis. Do we not only say, yes, we're psychologically safe, we love these ideas, what are the systems that reward it? What are the systems that actually put in place in the forum to celebrate failures? It's a bit like the graveyard for Google, killed by Google. And they see all the projects, see all the stuff. Is that part of the system? Or we just go, oh yeah, it's okay, Olga. Yeah, we have some talk about where it failed. What is the company doing to do those things that make it part of the process, part of the system, part of the language? Is, I think, a huge area for opportunity around that diversity and inclusion piece. Because it doesn't have to be the labels that take a lot of the press of demographical diversity. We can have diversity by the way in which things are getting done. And that, like you said, you can have two people experience the same experience and come out with entirely different views of it, thoughts of it, and impact.
Absolutely. And I think those are the people that we all can learn from. And I think empowering people to also share how do they want to hear the information about diversity, equity, inclusion? How do they respond best? How do they learn best about diversity, equity, inclusion, especially with the demographic that we have in the organization? What's important to them, and empowering them to own it? I think that's also really important, because I learn something new every day from our DEI council and the way they think and the way they bring up different frameworks about which issues to address, and the importance of communication to different groups. And again, it's that diversity of thought that really makes it a very unique and awesome experience.
And I think there's also this challenge between conversations, you know, concepts, and, you know, the process it goes through to actually get an outcome and traction. And recognizing each part of those has its importance, having an importance for the conversation to understand concepts, to be met where people want to be met. But then the traction of what will shift a behavioral action. You know, for some people, it might be, I need a burning ambition. I need something to go wrong for me to change my behavior. For someone else, I might need a burning ambition. Oh, I see a nicer place over there. I'd like to go and live. I'll change my behavior because I see that. And if we don't know that, we don't know how to communicate to somebody the difference between the conversation and concept to actually then a behavioral traction change. I remember on a panel with another HR leader who was talking about one of their construction sites. It had a site, there was about 600 workers on site at the time. It was a large stadium. And there was an issue around, I'll call it a diversity issue. And they stopped work for all workers on site. And in that moment, we're able to then down tools, right, we're going to do a day and a half of training, of shift. in that moment. It wasn't okay, let's keep it over there, isolate it, and then we'll work on some things later. Can you imagine the financial impact of 600 workers down tooling on a construction site to say, right, we've got an opportunity here. What a great gift we've been given. Let's use this to leverage a shift of understanding and behavior and get awareness around that. And that's what matters to us. So the difference from a conversation talk, yeah, we're going to do it. Maybe you put a little intervention in and a few bits, to the company doing something like that shows this ripples of what matters. So I found that just fascinating. It's a bit like, the 1 minute manager, managing the moment. And when you see something, and I try and do that with our kids, I just love that idea of taking that beautiful gift of something that could have been seen as a bad event or something, to turn it into this opportunity very, very quickly, very decisively, that actually has now been a celebration of they now have clarity of what is expected or not. And it wasn't just a vanilla, here's a mandate, here's this happened. No, everybody got the opportunity to be met where they were, have the conversation about it, and deal with it. And I found that just a fascinating story.
I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I can probably share just one quick story with you about our DEI. And we have a DEI council that consists of about 14 people. And at the beginning of the year, we set up SMART goals and looked for volunteers on who wants to act in a certain way, who wants to be an ambassador of a certain initiative that we're trying to accomplish this year. And we revisit those goals very frequently. But the cool thing is, those are a part of CEO's goals. Those are my goals too, to make sure that our team is set up for success. And that's on our leadership team to make sure that they support those initiatives, and we all move and support one another to make a difference and to make that impact. And whenever an opportunity presents, like you mentioned, whenever things happen, like Roe versus Wade, right?
Yep.
How do we react?
Yep. Those are the moments, aren't they, that when it's awkward and when it's difficult, can we lead in those moments? Can we behave in the way we want to? As we're coming up to the end, Olga, I have a question for you that I ask all of the guests, and it's in relation to an area we haven't discussed too much today, but it's around curiosity. And this curiosity is a key element of adaptation, to be curious about what isn't working, what is working, what new information has shifted, what's the changed in the landscape. Hey, we were now like this, now we're like this, our company's like this, industries like it, all of these things through curiosity. And a lot of what tends to happen is our curiosity, whilst we might think we're open-minded, ends up in a channel. So I'm curious, but within this, this little bit, and we can't see it, right? We think, oh, I'm really open-minded, I'm really curious. And then you meet somebody from another country or another culture, and you realize, wow, I haven't even been asking myself those questions, let alone the answers or the knowledge. I haven't considered those questions. So my question to you, Olga, is, when was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Ooh, very good question. I recently joined Chief, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Chief group. So it is women leaders that also empower each other, and they're from various sectors of the industry. And we were put in a core group with an executive coach who told us to share our life story with one another in 5 minutes. And it was a very interesting experience, because it was the first time you're meeting these people. This is the first time you need to be absolutely vulnerable. This is the first time that you're seeing so many perspectives on person's childhood to where they are in their career, and most of them are in the C-level. and how they got there and what their future aspirations are, but you also understand the peaks and valleys. And having that conversation makes you so curious about life and forces you to let all of your guards down and answer with the same type of authenticity and curiosity back, where in that moment, I was very pleasantly surprised of the impact it had on me and it had on the group and the kind of connections we were able to make.
I love that. The idea that, again, these things happen in waves, don't they? A framing of a question from an executive coach that sent off a ripple effect of someone then sharing a level of vulnerability that then, that's acceptable. I can now share. And then the profound effect in a group of doing that. And I just, well done for you for seeking that out, going and doing it, and then equally playing all in. Because often we get these opportunities and moments. Do we really go all in? Do we go in boldly, compassionately? Do we go in bare? Do we go in naked to these situations, knowing that that's part of being human?
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch, find out more about, you mentioned you work with other HR leaders and peers to just share what you're doing, the impact of those things. How do people get in touch with you, Olga? What's the best way?
Absolutely. My email is great. My phone number, feel free to text me. I'm definitely a text person, which is 224-292-8275. Really, for some reason, I tend to respond faster, but of course, email. Either email Olga at YCharts.com, or my personal is fine too, Spivak27@gmail.com. And I'm so happy to be connected to people and just continue to be support.
I love that. That is the first in more than 80 episodes where someone's given their phone number out as a connection. How
I like to be different.
How open in this world of abundance, where everyone to feel more connected, to have the opportunity to be welcomed in and have conversations, to hang out with you, to learn from you, has been a real gift. I want to thank you for your time and saying yes to come and join our show. And I look forward to collaborations, exploring, your journey, how we can connect our community with you, and vice versa, for everyone to co-elevate. So thank you very much.
Most definitely, Ross. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I learned just as much about you and your organization. And I'm so excited to network, because that's where curiosity comes in, and that's how we learn.
Thank you.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review, and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.